atomic viscosurgical device. Now let's look at fluid. I'm not going to talk too much on the biochemistry and the rheology of OVD. We're just going straight forward. If you push a volume of fluid through a narrow channel, the fluid flow through easily, no resistance, very minimal resistance. If you push a very viscous, non-viscoelastic substance, it behaves almost like a solid. You can use a lot of pressure, it may not go through at all. That brings us to viscoelastic. And that is defined, the most important thing, physical property in OVD is plasticity. That is when under pressure, when you force the pressure on it, and especially how fast you apply the pressure, the substance change its physical behavior. Alright, that is what is defined, the threshold is defined as yield stress. It becomes fluid, more fluid, like plasticity indicates how fluid it is. So just to illustrate, the OVD generally are like spaghetti or spring coiled up, entangled. They are not individual, they are entangled. So they can behave very cohesively, very solidly. When you apply pressure initially, there is resistance, but once you push a little bit further and faster, the coil, the spring uncoiled as shown here, and then you can force it, suddenly they give and go through a narrow channel. But of course, different OVD is slightly different. Most viscoelastic, they use 27 gauge needle, visco Helon, I think Helon GB as well, but some like Helon 5 or Helon Pro now they call it, you have to be a 25 gauge needle because these are much more viscous. Now, this is just to show you the viscosity of different substances. Water is very fluid. Blood is thicker. That's why blood is thicker than water. Coffee cream is thicker, and then tar is almost 1 million MPa. That's the viscosity. Alright, the number indicates the viscosity of the substance. If you look at OVD, this is OVD, you can see that some of them is almost as thick as tar. Right? But when you apply forces on it, and especially if you apply fast, the faster you apply, it behaves different. Above a certain speed, the viscosity turns to water. Alright, if I show you here again, water is here, this is tar. So essentially, the viscoelastic, when aesthetic, when there's no pressure on it, can be as thick as tar, or at least as thick as honey, or thicker than honey. But once you apply a quick pressure on it, especially through a small bore channel, it has to flow through faster. It starts to behave like water. So that is the characteristic of OVD. So how do we use it in surgery? Mainly as a space maintainer. Now how do you inject OVD? I would suggest that once you go in, inject some just sub-incisional above the iris. The reason why is you want to depress the iris so that the OVD, when you inject in the center, it doesn't creep underneath the iris. If you creep underneath the iris, it makes the surgery very difficult because the iris then will bow forward and then it has a tendency to prolapse through the wound. Alright, so this is viscoelastic sub-incisional, then you continue to inject more viscoelastic in the anterior chamber until you depress the anterior chamber a little bit. That is the best time to do CCC. Alright, you need to depress so that it's almost flat, but don't overdo it, because if you overdo it, some of the cohesive will just escape out and the whole things come out one block and then you're back to square one. The dispersive are better, they stay inside, but the dispersive are not that way. They maintain the AC but not as strong as the cohesive. So for Capsulorhexis, OVD ensures deep anterior chamber. Alright, with a flatter capsule, the balance of forces are equal, they cancel one another, there's no some oblique or aberrant forces that complicate your CCC and make your CCC run out. Okay, like in this case, then you have forces that complicates the CCC. So you want to use viscoelastic to make sure that the AC, the irido, what you call capsule diaphragm is almost planar. Most of the time when you just make transition, the anterior chamber shallow a little bit, so the OVD will have to depress that a little bit. So for anterior chamber maintaining, of course, the cohesive is probably the best. Alright, the clarity, the cohesive is probably the most clear. The dispersive is okay, but you have to wait for a while because it comes out as spaghetti in the strings. After a while, they blend together, they are okay. The adaptive is the best, I think, to maintain the space well because it can actually stack up vertically without moving sideways. Alright, leakiness, the dispersive they leak big in pieces, so it's not a big problem. The cohesive leaks either all or none, none or all. Most of the time it doesn't leak, but if you depress the wound too much, open up too much, or you exert too much pressure on the anterior chamber, the whole thing just come out and then back to square one. The viscoadaptive, they adapt so they don't leak so easily. Now when you do CCC, with viscoelastic, you have to be careful. You don't lift up your CCC so much, it becomes a sail, and then the viscoelastic will give a lot of resistance to it, especially the more cohesive viscoelastic. The best way is to flatten it and pull along the surface. Alright, that way you don't face so much resistance. How about hydrodissection now? Again, dispersive, not so much a problem, but if you're dealing like Helon Pro, Helon 5, you have to be a bit more careful. The best is as you enter, you inject BSS. The whole idea is to create an aqueous channel so that if you hydrodissect any excessive pressure, there's a venting, the excessive fluid BSS can be vented easily. Otherwise, if you don't create this fluid tract, the whole viscoelastic may trap the BSS inside, the pressure may build up very high. Alright? Again, dispersive, not so much a problem, but some of the strong cohesive, you have to be more careful. And then you go on to Phaco. By Phaco, most of the time, most viscoelastic has been removed. Certainly the cohesive type, so therefore tissue protection is not great. Alright? The dispersive tend to split into small pieces, and especially those with chondroitin sulfate will coat the endothelium well and protect the endothelium. But otherwise, underneath is usually been removed. Adaptive break into small pieces because during Phaco, where you have fluid flowing, you're actually under high stress. As I explained earlier on the chart, under high stress, the viscoadaptive tends to become more fluid. So they break into pieces, they still coat a bit. It's not a very strong coat, but they're just by being in small pieces, they may protect the tissue a little bit better. So this is Phacoemulsification. Some will require you to remove more. Some, if you are able to keep it in small pieces, small local space, you're okay. At this point, that is why some people prefer to use two viscoelastic dispersive to coat the endothelium, because they break into pieces, they stay at the endothelial level. But for Phaco, the main center core, you want to use a cohesive because you remove that, you create an aqueous, local flow channel, you can do your Phaco more efficiently. Viscoelastic is also for you to load the IOL. So now, whenever you load the IOL into the cartridge injector, you will put some viscoelastic to lubricate the IOL. And then IOL insertion, what is the better viscoelastic? They all, if you're familiar, they all works well. For some better than others. Alright? As a space maintainer, the dispersive is not good, minimal, but the control, the IOL tend to open a little bit faster, but it's still within control. The adaptive tends to open very slow, so that if you don't like the IOL to open slowly, that may be a problem. Okay, you have to remove all the viscoelastic before the IOL fully open. If you leave it inside, the IOL will probably take forever to open up. So if you're putting toric, you have to be a little bit patient. You have to remove all the viscoelastic before you can do your final alignment. OVD removal, at the end of the surgery, you must remove all your OVD, because any OVD that stays back will cause IOL pressure problem, and if it's behind the IOL, it may cause capsular block syndrome, in which the IOL is pushed a little bit more anterior, the patient will have myopia. And some of the cohesive viscoelastic may get trapped in capsular block syndrome for a long time, and it may take even up to 3 months to clear. Alright, and they can cause some pressure problem. How do you remove them? You can do a rock and roll method. That means you put your infusion pot on top of the IOL, and you rock it, and then you roll your infusion pot to and fro so that you can remove. I prefer the two-chamber technique. That means I go behind the IOL to remove the viscoelastic, and then go on to the front. But you have to be a bit careful, because sometimes the PC, especially those flimsy PC, can come to the pot very fast, and before you know it, you have a problem. So for removal, the dispersive is generally difficult to remove, but the good thing is they don't cause much IOP problem. They do. They're early, usually 2 hours to 4 hours, and then that's it. The IOP wise is also mild. Alright, it takes a long time to remove. The cohesive is very easy to remove. The whole thing comes on very fast. They can cause moderate IOP problems, about 1 to 2 days. Adaptive, well, is to remove it, you have to have a certain technique. You can't just remove it like that. It takes some time to remove all of them, because you have to remove all of them. And if any left behind, even 10%, it's going to cause a lot of IOP problems. Alright, so you have to be very careful if you are doing that. Now, this is an important chart. We show the different type of viscoelastic. The dispersive, for example, the higher the vacuum, the more of it being removed. Alright, but if you use too high the vacuum, it tends to cause a lot of turbulence. You could tend to cause some injury to the corneal endothelium. But for the cohesive, you look at this, from 400 to perhaps 440, that's where most of the viscoelastic can be removed. Which means, if you want to remove this particular cohesive, for example, there's no need to set the IA vacuum to 500, 600, 700. It doesn't make sense. All you need is to set at about 450, the whole thing will come to you nicely, because if you set too high, they start breaking apart, they behave like fluid, you actually take a longer time to remove all of them. So the higher the vacuum does not necessarily mean better. Between flow pump and vacuum pump is more efficient in removing viscoelastic. If you are using flow pump, you have to use higher flow, 30 panel, for example. You just want to have a quick draw in of fluid and reach your vacuum as fast as possible, so that the viscoelastic. Remember, you want to create a lot of stress on the OVD so that they behave like fluid, and you can aspirate it better, because as a solid, by right, you cannot remove this. So by using higher setting, you can remove it faster, but does not mean you have to go through the roof. Because here you can see 450 is more than enough. For Elon 5, this is cohesive. 0.5 is even more interesting because it's even lower. It's usually about 350 to 400. That vacuum range will remove all the cohesive cleanly. There's no need to have fancy higher settings than that. Just because it's more cohesive, just because it's thicker doesn't mean you need higher vacuum. You just have to know the characteristic of the viscoelastic that you use. And if you know them well, you can find the right way to remove them more efficiently. So during surgery, there are many steps. The different viscoelastic will suit different ones. When you're filling anterior chamber, you want high pseudoplastic because the act of filling, you want it to behave as fluid as you inject. So that's high plasticity. Capsulorhexis, you want to maintain the anterior chamber. Well, there's not much stress because when you do CCC, it's a very slow movement. You want a high viscosity type. Perhaps a cohesive type to maintain the anterior chamber. For emulsification, the dispersive is better because the cohesive tends to interfere with your surgery. Alright? Nuclear expression is for ECCE. Again, that's back to pseudoplasticity because there's a movement of the IOL. You want it to become more fluid. Alright? But this is not applicable to phaco. For cortex removal, portability, because during IA there's a lot of turbulence, you want to protect the endothelial cells as much as you can. When you open the back, you want to have actually cohesive. I prefer to use cohesive to maintain the anterior chamber so that I can do a CCC better. But here I think it means to fill up the anterior chamber for IOL implantation. So to maintain the back to high viscosity, for IOL implantation, because there's movement, you want to have pseudoplasticity so that you can put in the IOL better. And for removal, cohesion is easier to remove. So that comes to the last slide. I always tell my trainee, when I was a trainee, this table was so much easier. There's only two columns, viscous, dispersive, and cohesive. Today, there are 5 cells. So there's so much more to learn. First, up there, there's a visco-adaptive, which is one class. Then there's a still dispersive, cohesive, and dispersive. But the dispersive now has split into higher viscosity dispersive, like discovis, or lower viscosity dispersive, like visco. Of course, the cohesive, there's a big chunk there. The Elon families belongs mainly there. So for surgery, when you look at viscoelastic, you want the ease of injection. You want it to give you adequate protection. It can also do some viscodilation of the pupil. Space maintainer, preferably as clear as possible. At the end, you want it to be easy to remove, and of course, low risk of post-op intraocular pressure. It is a very useful tool. The physical properties is important. You need to know at least the one you use, not everything. More choices is better, depends on, especially if you do different kind of anterior segment surgery, it gives you better control. This is like an extra pair of hands to the surgeon, especially if you don't have assistant. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.